Once again, this is Lutherans Alive, and we're with Pastor Julia Fraser, chaplain at Bethesda Children's Home in Meadville. Thanks again, Julia, for being here with us. As we were interrupted right at break time, we were talking just a little bit about expectations or limitations maybe that folks might experience or need to be aware of, I suppose, if they come to visit as a group to Bethesda. Is that a difficult transition or an unusual set of expectations?
Well, I think probably anybody who works with teenagers, even in parish churches, knows that teenagers can experience some moodiness, and that what you see on the surface may not be all that's going on in their head and in their heart. And the same is true for us at Bethesda. You can't always go just on the kind of feedback that you're getting. I'm always convinced that there's much more receptivity than it would appear. And some of the things that people need to be aware of, for confidentiality reasons, we don't allow photos to be taken of our residents unless we have their permission to do that. When we have chapel activities, sometimes we have a seating chart that makes it easier for us. But I think most of those things I try to manage so that they're not really an issue for anyone and we don't have to raise them. I never want our young people to be embarrassed. Those things are in place to help them to be able to perform as well as they can in this setting. So we make sure that there's always a staff with outside volunteers so that they're not with the residents alone and that there would be anybody there to help, somebody trained there to help in the event that there was a need. But usually when people from the outside come, it brings out the very best in our residents and they rise to the occasion and don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Coordinating outside activities, visits, and those sorts of things, as you said, is just one part of, I'm sure, is a very full agenda for a chaplain. What are some of the other various responsibilities or things that occupy your time in calling as a chaplain?
Sure. We have weekly worship services. Ours are held on Wednesday evenings because on the weekends our residents will most often have an opportunity at least to go home on a home pass. And so there isn't the same opportunity for the whole community to be gathered on the weekends. So we gather for worship. Just recently during Holy Week we gathered a lot for a lot of services. And that's, I think, pretty well received on the part of young people that are not at all from a church background, not at all sure that they belong in a church, ones that I think could pretty accurately be identified as seekers in the truest sense of the word. But there's a lot beyond that worship ministry that I think has to go on at a place like Bethesda to make sure that all of the young people there feel that their spiritual needs are taken seriously and that they're encouraged to address them, whether they do that the way the church does that or whether they're still growing and figuring out how they're going to address them or not. I greet everyone as they come to campus. I bid them farewell when they leave. I celebrate birthdays with them in between. I have a lot of young people in for lunch across the course of a week so that we can have one-on-one time to talk with one another. They can whine to me and yell at me, and it all stays within the confines of my office. I do a lot of grief work. With the residents who have seen far too much of death for their ages and I think really need a lot of help in working that out. I'm really pleased about a community service program that has grown across the last year. Each one of our residential units has a weekly opportunity for some of the residents to participate in community service. 3 of the groups at area nursing homes. One group does manicures on elderly women.
Cool.
Another group helps with bingo, and another group kind of goes to play table games. And then the 4th unit goes to Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Erie that has a pretty serious Tuesday evening neighborhood outreach, including a hot meal program, and they help with that. And there again, I think those are real opportunities, not only for our kids to grow in social skills, but also to learn about themselves and what they have to give and what their suffering looks like in, like, you know, the larger scope of suffering in the world. And I think the community service part has been a good way for us to connect with all of the residents, not only the ones who participate voluntarily in our chapel ministry.
I'm sure, you know, most folks have seen, at least from a distance, if not by their own experience, that sometimes when we face the challenges and the difficulties of life, it can turn us inward, and we can become very preoccupied and self-centered in terms of dealing with those difficulties, and that sometimes that's exactly what we need, is a way to be able to focus beyond ourselves, to be able to remain connected with society, to see whether it's elderly or young children who also have needs, and if we can relate to them and address their needs and relate to them in some way that helps us to get outside of ourselves again, it can do a world of good for our own self-image.
That's really true for them.
Yeah. What's the average length of stay for folks that are at Bethesda?
Anywhere between 6 to 18 months, kind of depending upon their level of progress and the kinds of things that they have to work on. Ours is a behavior modification program. It's a highly structured day, and they get points for doing the right things, and they lose points for doing the wrong things. And at the end of each week, they kind of tally out those points and see what their level of progress is, and then they build from there. They gain privileges as they move up the ladder, and they also have to maintain their good progress longer and longer with each successive level. And in tandem with that, they're also undergoing therapy, counseling, and going to school, and I think sometimes also just growing up into themselves. You know, there's a maturation process with teenagers that can work hand in hand to help them gain more self-control. But it's really a positive thing. It doesn't work with every resident, but a lot of them, a happy day is to be able to see them on their discharge with a great deal of self-control, a lot more confident about their life, a lot more responsible, looking happier, better able to relate to people, and ready to go off and do well.
One of those things, I guess, from time to time we all need to be reminded of is that we are all unique individuals at different places in our journey of life and faith. And hopefully that when they have that opportunity, that experience at the children's home, it gives them a little bit of a positive impetus, a positive influence, and something that will help them to move down that road in a more healthy fashion as they do so. Julie, we've come to the end of our time today already, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come in to share a bit about your ministry and the ministry of Bethesda Children's Home. And I hope at some point you'll consider coming back so that we can talk a bit more about some of the very interesting and certainly very positive things that are going on at Bethesda.
That would be great.
Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today on Lutherans Alive. We hope you've enjoyed this opportunity to hear about the particular ministry of one of our Lutheran institutions in Western Pennsylvania, the Bethesda Children's Home, where good ministry is happening to help young people continue to grow. Until next time, this is Lutherans Alive. Good day, and God bless you.